Rachel, do you want to open up with a welcome to folks and sort of talk about the thinking about what we're doing today?
Okay. The GBA, Greenfield Business Association, meets as a board once a month, and one of the things that we've been trying to discuss over the COVID pandemic is how we can best help our business community. One of the things we decided was, as we were talking around the table, is that there's certainly a certain level of skills that can be offered through virtual stuff, as well as access information. And so we have created a forum series. We had our first forum on Tuesday with Jeremy Goldshire as a business to business, where he taught people how to do basic Zoom. And he'll run another one on Tuesday in response to people's comments, which is on how to do breakout rooms in Zoom. And yeah, so that's going to be on Tuesday at 10. Jeremy is actually thinking about doing a weekly one where he takes topics that are of suggestion. So if anybody has suggestions that would help them in this Zoom world, let us know, and we will take them into consideration and see how many people are interested in doing a forum with that. And then we started talking about some of the programs and things that were available to small businesses and people who are covered and not covered under them. And we realized that all of our knowledge is kind of all over the place too. So we thought it would be a good time for us to create a little bit of not just expertise, but also reach out to people like Teri and MJ who have those resources and ask them to run a Zoom for us. And we'll probably, if it works out that people are still interested, continue to do this as well, reaching out to other community members to be able to help us provide these kinds of resources for our businesses. And as you can see, some of you may recognize each other as fellow GBA member businesses, but because of this timing, we have decided as a GBA that, like so many other things we do that are community oriented, that all businesses are businesses at this time that we need to take care of. So please consider us a resource, even if you're not a GBA business, and feel free to reach out to us. You did get my email to confirm that you're here, so you all know how to reach out if you need to. And without any more, I will just say welcome, and we're happy to have you here. We are going to do the etiquette where everyone stays muted. If you know how to unmute yourself or to give a reaction that you can say, yes, maybe you can give me either a thumbs up or a nod. If you're not showing yourself, the best thing to do, yes, is to give a thumbs up, because that shows me who you are. And that is on your reactions. It's a little button on the bottom or the top of your screen that is in your control area. It kind of depends on if you are using an iPad or a computer or a phone where it is, but it should be there. I'm great and glad to see that some of you have some thumbs up. Okay, so if you are experiencing a problem and you know how to use the chat feature, you can either chat by telling everybody if you want to, or you can focus in on me, Rachel Roberts, and do a chat. Again, that's another button on the bottom, and you can say help, and I will try to get back to you and help you, okay? Otherwise, the best thing to do is to be muted so that we don't hear all your background noise, okay? I am MJ, Teri. It's up to you. I think, Teri, I need to unmute you because you should be able to communicate as you want to.
Right. And I think that what might make the most sense is, Teri, I'm going to ask you to do your presentation on the pandemic unemployment insurance first, and then I'll follow up. We also, with the small business assistance that the city is talking about rolling out, we are working with the Franklin County CDC, and I will note that John Waite, who's the executive director of the CDC, is here on the Zoom call with us. So he'll be talking or adding in anything I might add as we talk about the small business. But we thought that the unemployment insurance, the non-traditional unemployment insurance that's being rolled out, would be a helpful topic for everyone to learn a little bit more about. And Teri, I'm going to hand it over to you to lead us through a presentation on that.
Great, thanks, MJ. So first, for those of you who are not familiar with the Career Center, we are the MassHire Franklin, Hampshire Career Center. We have a full service office here in Greenfield, and satellite offices 1 day a week in Orange and 15 hours a week in Northampton at Forbes Library. We are currently serving people over the phone, via email, and through web-based services during the Corona crisis. We are able to help both businesses and job seekers around unemployment issues. I'll talk as MJ, because the first priority was the PUA. I'll address that, but then I'd like to summarize the other assistance programs that may be beneficial to you as well. So you may have heard that starting this past Monday, the 20th, that the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program started up and running in Massachusetts. And this is the program where people who are self-employed, independent contractors, people who are generally uneligible for regular unemployment insurance, people who have had their unemployment insurance expire, and people who work for religious institutions are eligible to apply under this program. So it is a system that is outside of the normal unemployment online and call center system. It's a separate portal that the state has set up because it's federal money that the state is funneling direct to self-employed folks. So there is a separate link to that. You can't apply for it through the general UI online website at the Department of Unemployment Assistance. And that portal, so one point that I wanted to make is that on our Career Center website at MassHireFHcareers.org, I have a page, an information page, both for job seekers and for businesses around COVID-19 resources. And on the job page is information about how to apply for both the UA and the insurance program. And it has links to both the background information page that tells you about all the information that you will need to apply for pandemic unemployment assistance, so that you can have all of that documentation ready when you go on the site to make the application. And there's a guidebook on how to do that, as well as a direct link to the form and portal itself, so you can fill that out. There also is a link there for the state has been offering these virtual town hall information centers, and now they have ones that are specific to applying for the pandemic unemployment assistance. So the PUA is 39 weeks of unemployment assistance, and it goes back to February 2nd, although for the first couple of weeks, they will only be able to go back into March, and then they will catch up. So you'll see a different amount as your claim goes forward. As I said, you can start applying as of last Monday, so it is functioning. The online system is functioning. If you don't have access to the internet or a computer, or have trouble with the online system, you can also call the teleclaim center, and that number is 877-626-6800. That also is on our website. And they have two separate tracks when you call that main number for the Department of Unemployment Assistance. Track 1 is for regular unemployment, and track 2 is for the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. So you presumably you will be able to speak with a live person and have them help you file your claim if you have difficulty with that online. As a last case resort, we also have our own internal staff people here at the Career Center who are helping with unemployment system. So we have access to the regular unemployment system portal, where we can actually make applications for people to sign to apply online if they don't have access via the internet. We don't have that same access to the PUA portal. So if there is a problem, with your claim that we are not able to assist with, we can try to escalate that up to the Department of Unemployment Assistance and get someone to help you with that claim and that issue. Also, as employers, I wanted to let you know that there is the state has a program called the Rapid Response Team. They're state employees, but they function out of each of the career centers. And the Western Mass Rapid Response Team, their main office is in Springfield, but they serve Franklin and Hampshire County businesses. And they are available to assist businesses who are downsizing or laying off people due to the COVID crisis. And they can help you through that process and advise you. And they can help you and your employees to apply for unemployment assistance. They also have what's called the Work-Share program, which if you are downsizing but not completely laying people off, you can share the cost of keeping your employees on the payroll with the Department of Unemployment Assistance. So you can reduce employee hours between 10 and 60%, and the value of that reduction in wages, that the remainder of that will be paid for by the state through the unemployment system. And the best way to apply for that is online through your employer unemployment account. If you have difficulties with that, again, the Rapid Response Team can help you make that application. There is a link on our employer COVID page to the Rapid Response Team with their email address as well as a phone number in Springfield. And they have been very helpful to many businesses in our region already. Let's see, I wanted to talk, there were a couple of other resources on our COVID page that I wanted to mention. Some of these you are likely to find on the Chamber's website, also on the Franklin County CDC website. But there are, on this page, there are links to the Small Business Administration and the IRS program around the grant programs, and loan programs and debt relief, and the Paycheck Protection Program, which I'm hoping will be operating again now that it's been refunded by Congress for the second round. And there are links on our webpage to all of those programs with more information about how to apply. There's also,
hey, Teri?
yes?
I'm sorry, there's a question in the chat room. Is there a way that you can respond to questions that come up?
I can just have to, I was looking at our website for reference.
Sure.
And feel free to reply to them out loud versus having to type the answer.
Sure.
Yeah. So the question is, can independent contractors who work for nonprofits apply? I'm assuming that question was relevant to the PUA.
Yeah, I would need more information on what that means. Are you saying that you have actual employment income from as an employee of a nonprofit employer, as well as having nonprofit, independent contractor services, or are you a totally 100% independent contractor that does your work for a nonprofit organization?
Hey,
So
Lucinda, I unmiked you so
questions.
that, oops, sorry. I unmiked Lucinda so she could answer it if she wanted to.
Okay, I'm sorry, we didn't talk about how to handle questions. So why don't we hold all the questions until the end of Teri's presentation, and then we'll wrap around and go back to them.
Fine.
Okay?
Perfect.
That would be
Sorry
helpful.
for that interruption.
That's okay.
We're learning this stuff.
Okay. So also on our website is a link to the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, which is the program that allows for employees to take sick time for businesses that are fewer than 500 employees. So they can take sick time or family medical leave under this program. And there's information there for businesses on how to respond to those requests. There's also some links to U.S. Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Franklin County CDC, the Economic Development Council, so you can find other resources for grant programs, perhaps, as well as information about the federal programs. And I think I will end there. There are a couple of private grant funds that I've also put on our website. One is the Restaurant Strong Fund, which funds $1,000 grants to full-time restaurant workers who are out of work because of COVID. So there's a couple of links there that you might want to take a look at. Okay, so now I'm ready for questions, unless you want to do your presentation and we do questions all together at the end.
Well, let's stick on questions largely as it applies to the unemployment insurance. Let's take a couple of questions there.
Okay. And also, if there are questions that I am not able to answer, I will make notes and I will send an email to MJ and the Business Association so that they can send that out via email to you as a follow-up.
So great. So why don't we unmute Lucinda, and Lucinda, you can ask your question. Lucinda, can you unmute yourself?
Did. Okay.
There you go.
We had signed contracts with two directors, a stage manager, and 12 actors for our spring festival of short plays, which obviously were completely postponed at this point. We don't know when we'll be able to restage them. So at this point, can those people apply for the PUA? One-time stipends in that sense, I mean, but that's how we pay them. These are people who would get 1099s.
Yes, if they get a 1099, they're eligible to apply for the PUA. If they're employed elsewhere, and this is the question I would have, if they're employed elsewhere as an employee, I would need to check on how they split that. Because if they were an employee elsewhere and laid off and receiving regular unemployment assistance, I would need to check on whether or not they're also eligible to apply for the PUA as an independent contractor.
Okay, thank you.
So I will check on that and get back to you.
Thank you. That.
Great. Other questions?
So, thank you, Rachel, for posting the website address.
Mary, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question? Mary? She's trying to unmute. I can see a picture of her trying to unmute herself.
Okay, I got it. My question is about unemployment. So I've applied for it. I've gotten the thing saying yes, that I can get it. We've also applied for the PPP loan, which of course ran out of money. What happens if we do get the PPP loan? Do we go off unemployment, or how does that work?
My understanding, and I'm not the best person to be answering questions about PPP. John Waite, I was on here. He may be able to answer this. But what I would refer you to is maybe to the Small Business Administration to answer that question as well. But my understanding is that the PPP, the intent of it is for you to keep your employees on the payroll. So I think you would need to come off of unemployment assistance and then start paying yourself and your employees out of that loan.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my understanding is that there is no double dipping, so you can't be paying yourself or your staff with both unemployment insurance or claiming unemployment insurance and also getting the PPP. You should definitely be talking to your lender about the details and the documentation that they will require with the Paycheck Protection Program.
Okay, that's kind of what I figured. I just wanted to confirm with you guys. Okay, thank you.
Let's see,
Other questions?
There's a question from Lori about, oh, excuse me, that was a private question. There is a question about once an application is approved, how long will the funds take to be received? So I have had varying amounts of feedback on that. I know someone who applied and their PUA application was approved in a matter of a couple of hours, and they were able to immediately receive payments. I also know of people who have applied and been denied and are now needing to be in an appeal process. So I don't think we have enough experience yet with the PUA program and what the glitches might be. And hopefully you'll be one of the lucky ones where your application will be approved fast, and you'll be able to receive your benefits. One thing that I do know is that similar to regular unemployment assistance, you need to go on a weekly basis and confirm that you are still not working as a result of COVID in order to be able to claim the benefits on a weekly basis. So you need to remember to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, I'm reading this question. There's a question about so laying off a 1099 consultant. So I'm not sure that actually that you can really lay off a consultant. You may be able to need to end their contract and not continue payment under that contract because you're not actually laying them off because they're not an employee. And that you have to be very clear about that with the unemployment system. So, but if you want to enter into a new agreement with this contracted independent contractor for fewer hours, and that's negotiated, then I think you can do that. It's just gonna, it may affect the amount of money that person is eligible for under their PUA claim.
Okay. All right. Seeing no other.
The PUA money does not get taken. There's no employer contribution for that. That's all federal money. And also that $600 additional payment that regular UI people are receiving is not charged to employers through their employer contribution.
Teri, do you know if that PUA and the $600 benefit will be taxable?
It is taxable. And you can, I think, choose when you sign up whether or not you want the taxes taken out in advance, and in which case your amount that you actually receive in your either your check or your direct deposit will be less than the $600 or less than the amount that you're awarded.
Other questions? Seeing none. Oh, Rachel.
Hi there. Yeah, I actually just signed up for the PUA a couple days ago, and I did get my determination in about a day. I'm currently waiting on the direct deposit, so that all went pretty smoothly. I don't remember any option to have taxes taken out though, and I was going to ask that question, but it's already been answered. But I guess I just wanted to add the feedback that if there was an option or mention of taxes at all on the application process, I didn't see it.
Okay, so let me check into that and find out if it's automatic. I thought it was an option, but perhaps it's automatic. I'll check it.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Great. All right. Seeing no other questions, we're going to hop over and I'm going to do my conversation about small business assistance that we're looking to provide through the state program or through the Community Development Block Grant Program. So my name's MJ Adams. I'm the Community and Economic Development Director for the City of Greenfield. We administer the Community Development Block Grants for the community, and I also and the staff person for the mayor on economic development initiatives. I've also invited John Waite to sort of sit in and to co-present with me, because what I wanted to lay out, first of all, what we have in hand and movement that we're doing to make more resources available to the small businesses. I think that initially when we saw this, the business interruptions that were happening, and we heard that the federal government was going to be rolling out some programs, we were excited about that, but also realistic, knowing that sometimes the smallest business owners don't quickly or can't navigate that process quickly and readily. And I think that that's what we've seen happen, is where what seemed like a reasonable chunk of change disappeared quite quickly to eligible applicants. And we are now in the process, and a number of people tried to access the Paycheck Protection Program and the economic injury disaster loans, and the money was allocated out quite quickly. We now know that Congress this past week has been working on an additional allocation. My understanding is both the House and Senate have passed it, and it should be signed into law and funding reissued in the near term. But in the immediacy, the question is, how do we help small businesses navigate through this and hold the edges together until first they are able to access some resources to keep themselves afloat, or and understand whether, and are operating, whether or not they can, when they are able to reopen. So the first thing about businesses reopening and what's going on with that, clearly we're looking to the governor to be making some decisions about that. We know we're all still in a shelter in place until May 4th. Our sense is that people in Massachusetts have been very compliant with the shelter in place, and because of that, we've been able to manage the surge relatively well. It's still been hard, but we've managed it as a state relatively well. We heard earlier this week that schools are going to remain closed until the end of June. That also includes daycares. And so we're also waiting to hear guidance from the governor about when other businesses might contemplate reopening. Clearly, I think the governor's taking a cautious approach, waiting to hear until we see more data. But I think everyone's fully aware that the May 4th date is probably going to be extended. And then as we come out, as it gets extended, what's the plan for reopening businesses? We don't have any guidance on that beyond our own sort of contemplation and reading the tea leaves as we see here in Massachusetts. I will share with you that the mayor, Mayor Whittegardner, has created a task force to start doing some planning around that, but it has its first meeting today, but that is a very preliminary step. That said, we're going to be in this for a while, and we know that the small businesses are going to have the greatest challenge in terms of trying to navigate and hold the edges together until we come out the other side and know when business can reopen and how businesses may reopen, and how, like I said, how we hold the edges together until that happens. That said, the federal government in their CARES Act back in early April made an additional allocation of community development block grant to help communities provide additional resources to respond to the COVID pandemic, and we are now working through how we're going to implement that locally. So the way the City of Greenfield has been thinking about it, we have an existing 4-town loan fund that's administered by the Franklin County CDC. It's administered for the town of Montague, Shelburne, Buckland, and the City of Greenfield. And we have some resources in there, and we are working to go through the process to make those funds available, not in the way they originally designed, which was a repayable loan, but in the form of a forgivable loan for small businesses, really focusing on micro businesses at first, which would be fewer than 6, so 5 or fewer full-time employees. And we do a calculation if you have several part-time employees to sort of add that up together so that fewer than 6 full-time employees, including one of them being the owner. And then also looking at a phase 2 of funding assistance that would go to businesses that were slightly larger. That would be 10 or fewer employees, including the owner in that employee mix. So we're looking to design that program. There's a preliminary draft design that is on the Community and Economic Development website for the City of Greenfield. And we'll be going through a public hearing process. I think we're going to do the public hearing, unfortunately, because of the timelines, that public hearing won't happen until May 13th. But we're hopeful that right after that public hearing happens, we'll be able to then start making allocations out of that for Town Loan Fund. This also requires some collaboration with Montague, Shelburne, and Buckland. And but we're hopeful that we'll have an application process out there and together so that once the public hearing process happens, those funds are available. So there's not a lot of money in that pot. I just want to share with you that there's not a lot of money there, and split among 4 communities, it's not going to go very far, and it will go, I'm sure, fast. So we are looking to allocate other money into the similar program, into the same program, which will be, like I said, focus first on micro enterprises, and then have a second phase for the larger businesses. But still, small businesses by our definition of 10 or fewer full-time employees. We're looking to do a public hearing on Monday, a virtual public hearing that you're all invited to, because we're going to move some of our program year 19 money to that fund as soon as we get the approval to do that. And then we're going to be doing a secondary public hearing also on the 13th, May 13th, to move some other money that's available from our CDBG 18 programs into that pot of money. So we're looking to make probably about another 125,000 available with the money that we have in hand through existing grants that have been awarded to the City of Greenfield. There is also another pot of money that's coming down from HUD through the CARES Act that the state is working to figure out how they're going to allocate that out to communities. They have not done that yet. They haven't provided guidance. We've been in conversations with them. We are trying to get them to make decisions sooner rather than later, because we know that the need is urgent. It's now. It's not 6 or 8 weeks down the line. It's now, and we want to expedite those funds being available particularly to the small businesses. So we will be, like I said, working with the state and getting some allocations. We're hopeful that Greenfield will get approximately another 200,000 from those resources. So we're probably looking at about 300,000 in this new forgivable loan program. Our goal was to make it available to the small businesses that are really trying to get in line to get the Paycheck Protection Program funds. In my conversations with folks about the Paycheck Protection Program, there's concern that 8 weeks out, you're not sure whether or not you're going to be reopening and being able to keep on the employment that you've committed to keep on by using the Paycheck Protection Program. So people had been a little reluctant to step in and apply to that, or at least cautious about whether or not they wanted to take on that debt with no guarantee that they would be able to meet the criteria for forgiveness. So we're looking for a flexible, small, little piece of change that will help small businesses hold the edges together until we get a better sense about the economy, reopening, and your access into the other federal programs that are being made available. As Teri mentioned, as I've sent out, there have been some other small grant programs that are out there for small businesses. And we hope that you're looking at taking advantage of those. As you can well expect, there will be a lot of demand on some pretty scarce resources. So, that's it. Like I said, we're looking for the Franklin County CDC to do the administration. We're drafting up an application that we'd like to make available as soon as possible. We'll know more time frames in terms of when things are due we're having internal discussions about prioritizing which businesses would be in line first for those funds. And the one thing I will say is that we are looking, if you take a look at the criteria that we've established to be eligible for it, I'll just run through it quickly, is that it's for for-profit businesses. It's not for nonprofits. I know there are a number of nonprofits in Greenfield. I would refer you to the Community Foundation for funding resources, but this is really geared towards the for-profit small businesses. The small businesses need to have been in operation on March 1st, 2019, and have been in continuing operation through March 18th, 2020, which is when the governor declared the state of emergency in Massachusetts. Micro enterprises businesses are our first priority, and those are those businesses with 5 or fewer full-time equivalents. So we'd be looking for you, and just sort of as a rule of thumb, I say a full-time equivalent is an average of 35 hours a week. So I know that there's a lot of people who work part-time, varying shifts. We'd be looking for some calculation along that line. And then the small businesses, which will be the phase 2, will be those businesses with fewer than 11 or 10 or less full-time equivalents. The interesting thing about the funds that come out from the Community Development Block Grant Program is we will be looking at the business owner's household income to be making a determination about eligibility for that. And so the owner's household income will need to be less than 80% of the HUD median income. So household of 2 would need to be earning less than $56,800, and it's by the number of size. And when we say the household income, it's not just the income from the business, it will be the net income from the business plus any other income coming in from other household members. So that means if there's another adult in the household and they're working, that we would need their income to be included in that. And we're looking for businesses that are open and continue to operate as essential businesses right now, or intend to reopen as allowed with guidance from the governor. So that said, John, do you want to throw any additional information in on this? You've been in the conversations that we've been having about putting this loan program together. Oh, and the loan will be forgivable. It will be issued as a loan initially upon documentation that you've spent the funds on what you said you were going to spend it on. The intention is to forgive the loan.
Yeah, thanks, MJ. And I just wanted to highlight that we've been running loan programs at the Franklin County CDC for 35 years, including funds that came through the town of Greenfield and some other towns in Franklin County. And, it's really exciting. Right now, we know most small businesses, debt isn't what you need. You need money, but you don't really need more debt. And so converting the CDBG funds into a forgivable loan, basically a grant, is really important. Just to mention that it was the Congress did approve more funds for the SBA PPP just last night. That should be rolling out pretty soon. I can tell you the first chunk of $349 billion that went, I think the SBA said they did more loans in 14 days, the same amount of loans in 14 days that they did in the past 14 years. So they just cranked that money out there. And I know there's a lot of people still in line. Most of the banks that I've talked to, including Greenfield Savings Bank and Cooperative Bank, people who were in line for the first round who didn't get through, they're going to try to process them for the second round. So if you weren't in line, even for the first round, the second round will probably run out as well. But that's the best way to go, is the PPP for people who have employees. And then one thing I just want to talk about is even the CDBG money. There's a lot of resources, but it's never going to be enough. And especially as this goes on longer, we really need to know more what you businesses are going to need to kind of get going again. I think we'll have more loan money, so loans, and we'll try to get our interest rates really low and defer payments. But we're also considering, should we try to start as a community, start a separate private fund I know some businesses have, CDBG has rules that you have to be a US citizen, you have to sort of done your taxes, and I know there's a lot of, businesses that don't have all their paperwork together. So we're considering a private fund. There are some people who are more comfortable during this time, and whether they would put up money to help our business community, because it's key that we keep you all healthy and everybody recovers when it's time to start back up again. So I'd love to hear input about that either now or over the next weeks. Thank you.
Well, and I want to plug our public hearing on Monday morning for the CDBG funds. Anyone who wants to hop in and offer a comment on that, we're more than happy, and that actually helps us sort of guide our thinking. So I really invite you to participate in that on Monday morning at 10 o'clock. It'll be a virtual meeting. And one of the things we've been talking about is really wanting to keep the barriers low. Yes.
I also put a link to that meeting to everyone, so it's been sent out. So if people want to see it in the chat.
Great. We're going to try to keep the documentation and barriers low to entry, which is why we're focusing on the micro enterprise first. We know that the 2019 deadline for your taxes has been extended to the middle of July, so we'll be looking for you to have your 2018 taxes and a profit and loss statement, some documentation about your number of employees at the end of February, so whatever regular employment, paycheck, payroll processing you do, we'd be looking for some sort of documentation on that. So, all right, so I'm going to go through the questions that I'm seeing. The question is from Jana Walters Gidsig. Looking to extend, are we looking to extend a similar program to nonprofits with no owner? I'll share with you that the CDBG program is not set up for that. It has, some federal regulations that do not allow us to do lending, even forgivable lending to nonprofits. So that is not something we'll be doing with our small business program. Let's see. Will there be any opportunity for not-for-profits? And like I said, with the nonprofits, I understand that you're a big part of our economy. I would encourage you to be in touch with Community Foundation and their resources. Also, John, I don't know if the CDC is looking to provide some of your funding for nonprofits, but unfortunately the CDBG funds are not eligible to go that way.
And I did speak to Jim Ayers at the sorry.
John, please speak.
I put the link for the Community Foundation on there, okay?
Great.
And I did speak to Jim Ayers from the Community Foundation, and they raised $3.5 million, and that is just going to nonprofits. It's not, it can't go to for-profits. So this is kind of evening it off a little bit, I think.
That sounds good. Good, glad to hear it. Okay, Kristen asked about what portion of these loans will be forgivable and utilized towards what? We're expecting that the full amount of the loan will be forgivable as long as you spend them in line with what you said you were going to spend them in. And it's largely, it'll be payroll, any sort of necessary business expenses, and we'll provide greater definition on that. We typically don't, my office doesn't typically run small business programs. We look to the CDC, but we do have to take a look at the regulations and guidance from HUD on what that will be. But we will make sure that there's clear documentation. But it will be your standard business operations, salaries, benefits, working capital, inventory, utilities, rent, mortgage interest if you're buying your property, if you buy your property, you've bought your property. So the sort of business, standard and usual business expenses. Let's see. What about micro businesses with only an owner and no employees? That would be eligible. It can be a one-person business and have no employees, and it would be eligible for the micro business definition. My biz doesn't qualify because of subject matter. Oh, I will make the one exception that that there will be some limits in terms of non-allowable businesses to operate with. The one off the top of my head I know is anything that's related to the cannabis industry, because this is federally sourced funds. All right. Any other questions? Yes, Rachel.
Hi there. Yeah, sorry I couldn't type it in the chat. I'm on a phone, so it's a little hard to manage all that. The one thing that I really haven't heard discussed at all, and it may be too forward-looking at this early stage, but the big question mark for a lot of us is what the retail world is going to look like when this all ends. Has there been any discussion about continued support programs for after we open if things just don't come back? Because, you know, like the gallery, for example, was a perfect example of a very borderline business in the first place. And if there's a 25% drop in sales because of a lingering depression effect, I'm just curious if there's any talk or discussion about that phase of things.
There is some talk and discussion about that. I think everyone's sort of trying to spend their focus first and foremost. I'll tell you, the city spent their time and energy looking at the public health issue. We're now starting to look at the other issues that are following up in terms of, small business assistance in the immediate. And I'll tell you that there's been so much information and so many new ways of operating that we've really focused on very much on the short term. But your question's well poised, Rachel, because I think everyone's thinking that, is this a time for reflection and reconsideration about how systems work, and how do we make the Greenfield future that we think we'd like to, and where does that discussion happen, and how do we navigate that journey? So informally, I've heard some very preliminary discussions about it, more so on in the smaller conversations I've had with people, but actually it came up a little during the Sustainable Greenfield Implementation Committee meeting last night, where we were talking about that. So I think it's a valid question to put out there. I don't see it at the top of anyone's list at the moment, but certainly on everyone's mind. Is that helpful?
The CDC is offering, we have a lot of webinars. We've teamed up with the Valley CDC and the SBDC, and so our website has a lot of webinars. Some of them are about, a lot of it is about pivoting. Things aren't just going to go back to normal for a while, at least. So coming up with new creative ideas. We're working with a lot of food and farm folks, and a lot of them have started these delivery services, and they're aggregating. The food supply needs to continue, so they're doing some great pivoting. It adds expenses, but it keeps their food moving. So I think every industry, every type of business, we have to think of alternatives.
There was a question that was in the chat room that asked, is there any negotiation with landlords in downtown corridor about forgiving or lowering rent in any amount to help organizations who are suddenly without income? And what I've been suggesting to folks, I did a workshop for landlords, residential property landlords yesterday, and have been encouraging everyone to talk with anyone who they might owe money to see if there's any sort of room for negotiation or modification. So I would encourage anyone who's in that situation and wants to know whether or not that's possible to have that conversation directly with their landlord. We know that people are all over the map in terms of what their financial capability are and where they stand in terms of their ability and willingness to make considerations. But I think that if there was ever a time to start that conversation, it would be now. Because we know that the initial financial supports that are coming out are probably going to float us for a couple of months, but we know that this is not a level of federal support that will be sustained. So we need to prepare for what things are going to look like down the corridor, and starting those conversations earlier rather than later. I would certainly encourage any business or organization to start having with your landlord right now. John, did you want to add anything into that?
No, that's, you know, our tenants in our building, we're giving them deferments. I hope a lot of landlords do, but landlords have bills to pay too. The more, you know, a lot of the banks are giving at least 3 months, so I would expect landlords should be able to give deferments. Forgiveness, a lot of them haven't decided that yet.
Okay, there's a question about, are there any local business crowdfunding that we know of, and this is something your business is resorting to and you haven't been able to get PPA or other loans because of the nature of your business? Rachel, I'm going to toss that one to you.
Right, me. There are some websites that are out there that are doing stuff, and we have been talking, a few of us through GBA, to do some crowd sourcing for the local Greenfield community. We just haven't developed the program yet. So I would say stay tuned.
Okay. Any other questions on that? All right. Seeing none, I'm going to say watch our website for information about applications for the small business loan program that we'll be putting out. Hopefully we'll get the applications up there sometime next week, but we'll be sure to get the word out when they're up there. And like I said, I'm moving forward and trying to expedite those approvals and making those resources available as quickly as possible. And really appreciate all of you joining us today. Teri, thank you for that presentation on the MassHire and the unemployment insurance picture. I think there's a lot of information floating around there, and everyone's trying to creatively think of how to put it together to make sure that that we've managed to stay together and weather this until we have a better sense of what the other side might look like and how we get there.
Sure, my pleasure. I'm also happy to answer questions if people want to give me a call or email me if you're having difficulties. And also keep an eye on our website too, because I do update those pages regularly with new information.
And I'll be sending a follow-up email for everybody who attended that will have Teri and MJ's contact emails. So if you do need to reach out to them on your own after this, feel free. Okay, so look for that email. It'll probably come out within the hour.
Okay, great. Thank you all.
All right, thank you.
Social distance.
Bye, everyone.
Rach, are you gonna stop recording, or have you already done that?
I am gonna stop recording, but what I want to do is there's going to be here we go.
Thanks, Rachel.